Conservative candidates see South Carolina as their best shot as they try to slug it out to try to halt Mitt Romney's momentum after his victories in Iowa and New Hampshire. Joining us from Charlottesville, Virginia for a look ahead is Larry Sabato. He is director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics, and he's one of the most accurate political forecasters around. Welcome, Larry. Now,
thank you so much for having me.
how important, Larry, is South Carolina to settling that question of whether Mitt Romney will be the nominee?
Well, let's put it into context. Even if Mitt Romney loses South Carolina, he is still clearly favored now to be the nominee of the Republican Party for president. He can ice the nomination very quickly if he wins South Carolina, because of all the early states, of the 4 or even 5 early states, counting Nevada's caucuses in early February, it's South Carolina that presents the greatest obstacles to Romney potentially.
Well, even voters, Larry, who may be lukewarm on Romney, they seem to view him as the most electable of the GOP candidates. Will electability trump ideology on the Republican side in 2012?
Well, it has so far. Of course, it has mainly because the conservative opposition to Romney has been split. Mitt Romney couldn't have scripted a better nomination race than the one he's gotten. His opponents can't seem to get together. The main interest groups opposing him can't rally around the same candidate. There are 3 major conservative candidates remaining in the race and competing in South Carolina, including Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, and Rick Santorum. So as long as he has that kind of split opposition, even though John Huntsman is continuing and potentially draining some moderate votes from Romney, he's in a pretty decent position.
But do those conservatives you just spoke about, the conservatives who don't support Mitt Romney, do they have any hope of rallying around that, coalescing around that single alternative to make this into a real contest?
So far, we see no indication of that coalescing. It's always possible it can happen. We've got 10 days until South Carolina, and that's a fairly long time. We only had 7 days between Iowa and New Hampshire. So if the coalescing is going to happen, it's going to happen now. It's now or never, and I think most of the conservatives understand that. Some of the fundamentalist preachers and leaders in South Carolina are apparently conferring, discussing exactly this. But the problem is, how do you get the other 2 candidates out of the race if you pick one of the 3 conservatives? They all realize this is their one and only chance to become president. If they drop out, they have 0 chance. If they stay in, maybe it's a 5 to 10% chance.
But do you think those conservatives, as well as the evangelicals, can they get past Romney's past support for abortion rights or his support for the Wall Street bailout and his Mormon faith?
Romney's never going to be their first choice. They may have to get past it for the general election, and that's where President Obama comes in. They're very strongly opposed to the president, and therefore they will support, with some degree of enthusiasm, any Republican running against him. But we'll see how this nomination process goes and how much division emerges within the Republican camp. Some of the Republicans, particularly Newt Gingrich and Rick Perry, have made the Democratic arguments for them with the attacks on Mitt Romney as venture capitalist. The Democrats are simply going to lift that, put it into ads with credibility, because the charges are being made by Republicans and they're going to use them in the fall.
Right, they do sound like Democratic arguments, as you point out, but Newt also has that super PAC money backing him with that hard-hitting documentary. Do you think that'll work for Gingrich in South Carolina?
South Carolina has a higher unemployment rate, so some Republicans, particularly those of $35,000 a year annual salary and lower, where Romney was weak in New Hampshire, they may be most susceptible to this argument. So yes, there is some potential for that to work, but of course it's also raining down criticism on Gingrich from other sources. Newt Gingrich and conservative economic Republicans who believe that Gingrich is making a Democratic argument in a Republican primary.
Larry, if the conservatives can't coalesce around one candidate, do you think there's still, an opening at this late stage for someone else to just jump in?
There's a theoretical chance of that. On my Crystal Ball website, we did an analysis in December showing how a candidate could actually enter in February and still compete for a majority of the delegates. You could still make the filing deadlines, but you have to have a horse to ride. Where are the horses? Well, they've all decided to go out to pasture this year. Mitch Daniels and Jeb Bush and Paul Ryan and Chris Christie's backing Romney. Who's going to run? I haven't seen anybody willing to do it. Sarah Palin makes noises from time to time, but she's probably not the solution to this problem.
One of the reasons for the split, you said that John Huntsman may be able to siphon off some votes. He seemed energized by his third-place finish last night, coming ahead of Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich. Can he capitalize on that breakthrough in South Carolina and Florida after that? He's polling pretty low.
I doubt it. I doubt it. 17% was not very impressive. He was seen as having a chance to finish second. If he had been able to do that and stay close to Romney in New Hampshire, he might have had a case. Even then, it would have been difficult. But to finish third at 17%, given the momentum I think the media granted him in the last week, they did for him what they did for Santorum in Iowa, and he still couldn't do much with it. So I don't see much of a future for John Huntsman. I'm not sure where his constituency is in the Republican Party. He's presented himself as the most liberal Republican and then the most consistent conservative, and now he's a moderate, and it's been a poorly run campaign.
All right. Thanks a lot for joining us, Larry, with your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our thanks to UVA's Larry Sabato. I'm Fred Katayama, and this is Reuters.